Coming from the e-commerce industry, like I got a lot of inspiration from Shopify. So the way that I think about it is I'm creating the Shopify for short-term rentals. I want to put in all the tools and really have everything kind of all baked in there so people can be really successful in really marketing their website and making sure that folks really convert.
Can you touch a little bit more on the basically scrubbing of data? So you're pulling off of your website or the emails. How often are you reaching out and touching those folks?
If you're doing email marketing, it falls into two buckets. One that is called sequence emails and one is called broadcast emails.
So I'm kind of curious, your thoughts on PMS. Which ones have you tested out? Do you recommend people to go to that one for any specific reason?
Yeah, so it really depends. Like there's no like one size fit all, the best PMS out there. It's really hard to convert someone on your website that first time. So you really need to retarget that customer to come back to you.
Welcome to The Big Break Show, your go-to podcast for real estate investing, business acquisition, mindset, and lifestyle. Now, let's dive into Season 2 with your hosts, Rafa and Dan Tollens.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Big Break Show. And today, I am in California. And as always, I am with my man, Mr. Dan Tollens. What's up, brother?
Living it, brother, man.
You in your home today or you in the studio? Where are you at?
No, I'm at the home office, right? So trying to get some stuff done now that you're not here.
Dude, thanks. I appreciate that. No more distractions, huh? No more noon days at the bar. Noon at the
That's
tiki
right.
bar. And tacos and margaritas. And what do we drink? Mai Tais or no, what are they called? Pina coladas.
Yeah.
That's funny. So today we have a pretty cool episode. We're recording remotely from all our different locations. We got Gil here with us today. Gil, how you doing, man? Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, doing awesome, man. It's been good.
Good. So where are you at, Gil? Where are you located?
I'm based in San Francisco. So I'm one of the unicorn few that born and raised in SF, still in SF today. There's not much of us here.
Dude, it's funny that you say that because most people are leaving SF. Like I had a family member that lived there for like 7 years and now they're gone. I think they live in Napa now, actually.
A lot of folks left, especially during the pandemic because we had so many transplant coming in for tech, and then everybody went remote, and so everybody went back to their hometown, and it just hasn't quite picked back up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we get in the conversation today, again, we appreciate you coming on. Why don't you let everybody know who you are, what you're about, what you do, and why you're on the show today?
Yeah. So my name is Gil. I am the founder and CEO of CraftedStays, a direct booking platform. A bit more about me. I'm a host myself, so short-term rental host. My wife and I, we own 3 properties out in Branson and the Smoky Mountains. Obviously, we're not there, so we're managing it remotely. I've been in tech for the last 15, 16 years now. Worked on some pretty major projects, probably products that you've used yourself. Worked on the August Lock, Yale. I was at a company called Samsung Smart Things. So we did a lot of like in-home technology there. And then for the last 6 years, I've been working in e-commerce. So for the last 4 years, I've been partnering up with Shopify, building out their e-commerce platform and logistics background. And then just last Thanksgiving, I left my W-2 job in tech and decided finally it's time to do something my own. Luckily, I had all my short-term rentals to kind of help float me and kind of keep the income going. That allowed me to just take a big risk myself and just try something out on my own. And I don't regret it. I've learned a ton over the last 10, 11 months starting this business. And it's probably from everything that's coming out of it, it's probably the most self-growth I've done in my entire lifetime.
I love that, dude. There's a lot in there that you said that I wasn't aware about. We chatted briefly when I was on your podcast. What was it, a couple of weeks ago? I remember you mentioned you were in tech, but I didn't know you were that involved. I mean, a lot of those brands are pretty well known.
Yeah. So I was at a company called Narvar a little while ago. And if you ever bought anything from Home Depot, Sephora, The Gap, and they sent you out this email that says your item's on its way, it's coming tomorrow, sorry we missed you. And it looked like a Gap email, it looked like a Home Depot email. It was actually done by a platform called Narvar. So back in the late 2010s, I was rebuilding their entire platform basically on the back end side of things. So I got a chance to work with really big brands, understand how they do marketing, how they do customer experience, what are the different touch points, and that led me into e-commerce. So that's where I spent a lot of my time and just learned a whole lot in product management over that period.
And now you're doing full e-commerce, correct?
Well, now I'm full-time hospitality now. I guess we built basically a direct booking platform, taking all the learnings I've taken from the e-commerce world, meshing it into my hosting journey as a host myself, and really just trying to help folks get into direct bookings, really win in direct booking. So I come from a very different background. I don't come from like an agency background. So I'm not building sites off of WordPress. I'm trying to leverage all the learnings from technology and making it much more accessible, much more scalable, I should say.
So, Gil, when you say, I know you and Rafa's talked a good bit more than you and I have, but when you say you're a host, are you hosting just your properties? Are you doing this for folks, or what is? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So my wife and I, back during the beginning of the pandemic, we had already had a long-term rental that we purchased, and we originally got into real estate because we were trying to offset our taxes. I made the mistake of thinking, oh, you can buy any rental and you can offset your taxes. No, it doesn't work like that. And then I ended up finding out that the only way you can really do it if you have a W-2 is to do a short-term rental. So that's kind of how I stumbled upon doing short-term rentals in the first place. And we bought our first place in the Smoky Mountains, and honestly, that was a huge blessing because I've been in retail like in my early days of my college days to help me kind of float my college degree and pay for my way through college. But like being in hospitality, being customer service, being able to host so many different families in my home is very rewarding for me. And then 2023, we bought 2 more properties that year to really scale up our portfolio. So now we have 3 properties now, all in kind of like the short-term rental, Airbnb, VRBO space.
Yeah, very cool. I noticed very similar concepts as myself working directly, with my wife. We've worked together for 18 years. So very, very cool that you've got, her along your side for this journey. I think there's a lot to be said about that, getting to enjoy all the hopefully more ups and downs, but it's very, very rewarding. And we're in the hotel space as well. And that's one big thing for my wife, Cassie, is that she just loves, putting a smile on people's face when they come and visit, and, being in the hospitality industry. Usually people are happy, but there's people that are still in a bad mood when they travel. And that's, unfortunately, it's not preventable.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very cool, man.
Yeah, I would say like it took a while to get my wife on board, to be honest. I don't know how it was for you folks, but for me, convincing my wife to put down as much as our primary residence on a short-term rental was hard for her to stomach. And it took me a while to convince her, but it wasn't until she trusted me. She trusted me to take that leap of faith. She knew I did my homework. Silly as it sounds, I created her a PowerPoint slide and I show her, this is what we're getting. This is what it looks like. This is what we're trying to do. I treated her like an investor. And she bet on me. And it wasn't until 6 months later we saw the cash flow come in that she really said, okay, Gil, okay, you know what you're doing. You're making sure that you're doing your due diligence. And it's not like things don't happen. It's not like mistakes you don't make mistakes, but that taught me a lot. It taught her that she can trust me on such a big gamble. And the next following years, we end up scaling our portfolio to more and more properties. So it wasn't always easy. She wasn't always on board, but she knew how hard I wanted this. Yeah.
And so you're more geared towards direct booking. Is that kind of one of your expertises, I guess?
Yeah. I think for me, we got into we always had the anxiety that we were having these $600,000 mortgages on these homes, and most of our revenues were coming from one platform. It was coming from Airbnb. Mm-hmm. And we always had this fear that if for whatever reason they banned us or we had a bad guest experience and they took us off for a couple of weeks, that could jeopardize our ability to pay mortgage. So we started investing into direct bookings, and we created our own website off of WordPress because all the design agencies were doing it. It looked really good. But honestly, it was a really tough challenge getting to direct bookings. And for us, we know that we don't have to get there like we don't have to get that 50, 60% within the first couple months. Like our goal is over the next 3 years is to grow to a sizable direct booking so that we have a very sustainable business that is not reliant on any one institution or organization. So we invest into it, and we invest into it in the long run.
Yeah, that's very smart to do that early on. And I can understand your pain point about having your booking or your platform taken down on Airbnb. I think Rafa's currently dealing with that on several for whatever reason. So for us, we also throw it out through we use Cloudbeds to manage all of our OTAs. So it puts it on Booking and Expedia and several others. That's not really my area of expertise. That's more Cassie's department, but I know that puts a lot more eyes out on us. And then, we convert the folks that come in and say, hey, when you come back, book direct with us. And, not only does it put more money in our pocket, but then we can offer them a little discount because, those platforms do take 15 to 19% currently.
Yeah. It's the rate's pretty high. I think like on average it's probably in like the 18% range there. But if anything, like guests love to come back to you. They love booking back into the same place that they had a really good experience on. So like if you are one host that really cares about the guest experience, you really want to make sure that they have a great stay, they're going to want to come back. They want to have a stress-free stay. So it all really starts there. Yeah.
And I think that also speaks to, the unique experience that you can offer somebody and overall, like you said, overall guest experience. And, Rafa's done a really great job as far as setting a lot of his properties apart, do with his, the wallpaper and murals and all the different amenities. And, there's a lot of cool things out there. And, being in the Smoky Mountains, I'm sure you've got a lot of opportunity, to set yourself apart as well.
Yes and no, I would say. Like in the Smoky Mountains, it's probably one of the most competitive markets out there. I think last few years we saw like a big influx of like people that probably had the similar mindset to me, where they got into hosting as a hobby. And people are really stepping it up. Like they know like you really need to have really good photography. You have to have the best amenities. So it's gotten really competitive, but we've been lucky that like we consistently try to push ourselves to have the best product out there for folks. And I think guests really love staying with us. They have a good experience. So we give them a good time. We have a really good place. Like all of our properties are well amenitized for specifically families there. That's our focus.
Have you found getting into real estate that you found yourself kind of shifting who your network is and kind of who your mentors are, and coming from working with big corporations and larger companies now to really focusing on your future and your lifestyle? Have you found kind of a trajectory change kind of based on who you're hanging out with and spending time with?
Yeah, I would say probably for the last 15 years, I've been hanging out with a bunch of tech folks in the industry, not just engineers, but people all in tech. So like partnerships, business development, customer service. But it's a very different breed of folks that I surround myself right now. Like I'm surrounded by a lot of folks in the short-term rental space, and it's just so diverse. All of us come from this space from very, very different areas of life. Some folks had a regular W-2 job and in corporate, and other folks was just grinding for a long while, and they got into arbitrage and they figured out a way to break free, and they're building something for themselves. And they had no experience in hospitality before, no experience in operations, and they've done really, really well. So that's probably one of the biggest, I think, blessings specifically for this industry is that every one of us has a skill set somewhere out there, and we all come from it from different angles, and we can all be successful in our own ways. There's not one singular path that you all have to follow, and this is your recipe for success. I've seen people that, I had someone on my show that was really big into fishing, and he became a host, and he's so embedded in the fishing culture there that he attracts a lot of other folks in the area to want to go to his place for fishing because he's built out an experience specifically for them. And he is 50% direct book. Nice. So he's not relying on the platforms. But someone else like me, I can't replicate what he does. I can do my own thing, but I can't replicate what he does. So it's just very inspiring to see people come from very different walks of life and be able to rock this small industry as it is.
Yeah, one of the biggest thing too is finding out the customers, right? Like every time somebody starts to host, I always tell them, host who you would want to be like yourself. Like, what are you looking for? Those are the people that you should be hosting. Like, well, what do you like? Host you, right? Like, set up your place for yourself, so to speak. I want to touch a little bit on a couple things about how this direct booking thing, and you have a 3-year goal to try to get completely off these OTAs, right? How are you structuring that aside from building your own direct website? And I've seen some of your websites, obviously they're beautiful. But like, what do you do outside of that, other than just having your own website that pops up on Google with like SEO searches, things like that, that you might be able to share upon? And how do you remarket to your guests so they can come back and continue doing these bookings if they continue to travel to those same locations?
Yeah. I really think of this as like 4 different parts of it. So first off is like really understanding your brand. So kind of going back to Rafa, what you were just saying about like knowing who your target market is, designing for that target market. It really starts there, because if you don't get that right, none of it matters. Because if you really don't like tailor your space so you're giving a 5-star experience, when they land on your direct booking site, it feels like it's natural to them, it's going to be hard to convert them to rebook again. So it really starts off with like identifying who your avatar is, what's your brand, what do you stand for, what type of experiences do you want to build, how do you empathize with that ideal customer profile or the ideal guest profile out there, and starting there. So it starts with the brand. Second is really making sure that your website is well performant. It loads well on mobile. It looks really good. It builds trust. It's tightly integrated back into your PMS, so it stays fresh. Like all those things to make sure that your website is there to perform. And then it goes into like the channels, the marketing. And it's going to be different for everybody else. Specifically for me, I do a lot of email marketing. So that's my specific channel because I'm in vacation markets. So I have a lot of folks that come back to me year after year. So it's effective for me to do email marketing. But there are folks that do really well because they have a unique stay. Maybe they have an A-frame or yurt. And social media and influencers are the most effective way to leverage a unique stay. So it kind of varies on like where your target audience is. So really starting there and identifying what channels they're in to market them. And then the last like 4 part of it is really how do you do remarketing, retargeting? Because it's really hard to convert someone on your website that first time. It usually takes someone to go onto your website maybe 8 times, or at least 8 different touch points. So it could be a few on social media, a few on your website, but it takes roughly around 8 times for someone to convert to you. So you really need to retarget that customer to come back to you. So you can do things like Facebook pixeling them so that when they land on your homepage, Facebook knows about it and is able to serve ads to kind of bring them back to your website, and you're staying top of mind with them. So that's kind of how I think about, like, I call it the direct booking quadrant. So branding, website, channels, and retargeting. I write about it on my blog as well too. But those are like the 4 foundational pieces if you're looking to get into direct bookings.
Gil, can you touch a little bit more on the basically scrubbing of data, right? So you're pulling off, I guess, off of your website or your other booking channels, the emails from folks that have stayed with you, and then I guess you're throwing it into a MailChimp or Constant Contact, or how often are you reaching out and touching those folks?
Yeah, so I think that's similar to like Rafa's question. Is like, how do you retarget past guests there? We have a 12-month nurture campaign. It really hits home in around that 10-month mark there, because that's where people are starting to rebook again. So if you're talking about annual visitors and you're having people come back again, that 10-month email, maybe the 9-month email is the most effective one, because that's when they're most likely to convert. Everything leading up to that is just to make sure that you're staying top of mind for them. So
yeah, but as you're doing that, I mean, what type of information are you sharing? Are you creating like a newsletter, or what are your for folks that are listening? I'm sure they're trying to figure out how to capture more direct booking, and trying to figure out, like for us, we're going to have 4 hotels here in one market, so it's a lot different than trying to fill up 1 or 2 properties. You know what I mean? So. We've got some people on the backside doing stuff, but we're just kind of curious how you put that out there, what you're focusing on, and if that's something you're doing yourself, or you have maybe a VA that assists you with it.
Yeah. I don't have a VA that's assisting me with it right now. We actually hire an agency to help us with the nurture side of things. So the way that I break it down is like, if you're doing email marketing, it falls into two buckets. One that is called sequence emails and one is called broadcast emails. So the sequence emails are emails that you trigger basically immediately after they check out. And you're basically nurturing them for the next 12 months. And it's a canned email, and it's not tied to any seasonality, anything to do in a specific time period, but it's based off of basically when they started the stay and when they're going to book next with you. So you're talking about, did you get to see this? Did you get to eat here? And all you're doing is providing value and staying top of mind. That's what you're doing. And in the month 9 and 10 periods there, that's where you're trying to like maybe give them a discount code to stay back with us again. And that's where you give value. And then you start to like ask for a sale. But you don't ask for a sale every single month with these emails. So that's the sequence emails. And then alongside of that, you have your broadcast emails, which are things to do in that specific region. And you can do it either quarterly or monthly, depending on how much bandwidth you have there and how much do you have to talk about. And really, those emails are focused around things to do in a specific time. So if you have concerts, if you're talking about like, for instance, like the holidays are coming up and you're talking about the holidays and how to get ready for that, things to do, places to visit, things like that, stuff that are very seasonal based, you want to send that out as broadcast email. So basically every month you write out this, basically all the things to do in that specific month, or depending on what your booking window is, like maybe 2 months out, what to do 2 months out. And you're really there to like nurture and continually providing value there. What you're really trying to do is not try to sell them hard, but you're trying to really be that thought leader so that when they're thinking about traveling, when they're thinking about going back to that place, you are the only one that they think about because you're consistently talking about all the things to do specifically for them.
Now, you say you're using an agency, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So we use an agency. The agency that I'm using is Go STR Marketing. They do our 12-month nurture one. They do something special where they'll do SMS and emails. So what they do is they'll send out a SMS first, and if they respond, it automatically triggers an email to go out with a discount code. So usually the opening is like, hey, thanks again for staying with us last month. We really enjoyed hosting you. Would you be interested in getting discounts and recommendations from us on a regular basis? And if they say yes, then we email them. And it basically,
so that's basically their consent, right? Based to continually market to them.
Exactly. It's the one we use StayFi, so we already get their consent in the very beginning. Yeah. But this is there to really say like, hey, I'm reaching out to you, and it's coming from SMS, so it feels very personable to them.
Yeah.
Rather than like if you're just in their email inbox, you get buried with everything else.
Oh, for sure.
So every time we ask for a sale, we SMS them first, and then we give them the discount code in email. So we nurture in email, and they may just like not read everything, but they will like come month 9, they're reading that email, they're reading that text message from us. So that's why I use that agency for that.
Okay, so Gil, I have a bunch of questions around this. First of all, the rate of return that in terms of what you're paying this company, I'm very curious about, like how you're tracking that, right? And how it's being tracked. Do they track that for you in a CRM? Do they give you reports? How does that all work? And lastly, is it more beneficial for you to work through this company, or why not do it yourself if you know how to do this and have just like a very well-trained virtual assistant?
Yeah. Maybe I'll start with the second question first there. Like, why did I hire this agency to begin with? Like, my expertise is really building well-converting sites. Like, my expertise is not in email marketing, is not about nurturing, is not about using those tools and doing all those automations. So I'd rather leverage someone else to help me do it first. And maybe later on, I might take it in-house. But with anything, it's like, it really helps to have someone that has done it before to kind of show you the right way to do it first before you try to do it on your own. Yeah, and so if I scale and we end up doing another brand, maybe I'll take that on, but I just feel a lot more comfort out of it. We've been just, and kind of like to your first question of like rate of return and ROI and all those things. Like, I think we're just in still the early days of bringing this. So like I mentioned this earlier, but direct bookings is this long game there. So I would say like the ROI is like 1 right now, where it's like we're getting back what we put into it. And my expectation is that over time, as our email database builds up, then we start to see this exponential return there. And like, it's a lot easier to convert repeat guests over and over again than it is to win new ones there. So we're trying to really compound our efforts in the future years rather than really focusing on just now.
Yeah, I really want to look into this. I didn't even know there was an agency for this, to be honest with you. And I don't know why it never even crossed my mind. I stopped doing email marketing a long time ago because I didn't want to go through all this. And I mean, we talked about this on your podcast, right? Like we would remarket and then we stopped, and it was like, why, right? And now I'm thinking about it and I'm like, okay, wait a second. Obviously, we outsource pretty much everything to the experts. Why not do this for the marketing part? Now, maybe you don't want to talk about this, I don't know, but in terms of your cost, rate of return, like how much are you putting into it to getting back? I know you said 1-to-1, but like, is it like, are you paying is it a percentage fee that you pay these guys? Is it like a monthly fee? Like, how does that look?
Yeah, it's a monthly fee. I think it's like, depends on the portfolio, but it's like, I think around roughly like $200 a month. So if you get one booking a month on it, it's pretty solid already.
And they track everything for you? Like they'll keep track of your emails. Do they tie it directly with your StayFi themselves, or do they set all that up for you?
Yeah. So they pull directly from StayFi. I'm on OwnerRez, so they pull from OwnerRez as well too. But in terms of like tracking conversion, that's on my side there. So my site is set up on Google Analytics, so I know what sources come in and which one's actually converting there.
And what was the agency name on that, Gil?
Go STR Marketing.
So Gil, while Dan writes that one down and text it to me, buddy, because I'm definitely going to look into these guys as well. So Gil, I want to shift it a little bit here and talk about PMS, because you said you're on OwnerRez, and as we both know, there's a million out there, right? I'm on Hospitable and on Guesty. I used to be on like Tokeet and all these other ones, and I've slowly transitioned. Hospitable, number one, is the cheapest for me and does the basics that I need, but it's terrible with like the direct booking stuff. It's terrible with like payments. It does the bare minimum. Their customer service is the worst now, unless you pay them an extra fee. So I'm kind of curious, your thoughts on PMS. Why are you with the OwnerRez? Which ones have you tested out? And do you recommend people to go to that one for any specific reason?
Yeah. So I've been using OwnerRez from the very, very beginning. I was surrounded by folks that started off using a PMS from the get-go. So I knew how hard it was for folks to transition from one PMS to another. And you've probably gone through this a few times now where it's a very painful experience. Yeah. So we didn't want to deal with that. So we ended up starting with OwnerRez, and just kind of like our mastermind group was just a lot of OwnerRez folks. I would say OwnerRez is really good if you're like super tech savvy, you are like systems thinking, you can break things down. They're not very opinionated. So like you have to figure out like, oh, after X days before checkout, send this message. And you have to like write out the template yourself. You have to craft everything yourself. Whereas like what you've seen on the Hospitable side is like, they say like, oh, these are the 10 messages that you should be sending out, toggle them on and off, and they have a template for you. They're a lot more opinion on their side. And Guesty for Pros is like similar as well too. Where they are very opinionated on how you should be operating your business. And because of that, it's a lot easier to get through that learning curve there. So it really depends. Like there's no like one size fit all, the best PMS out there. I would say like if you're on the professional side, you're scaling up, Guesty for Pros is like one of the strongest PMS out there. They're the most equipped. They're also a bit more expensive than some of the others as well too. So you kind of have to get to a certain scale for it to make sense from like an ROI standpoint.
Right.
Their OwnerRez is actually pretty cost efficient, and it has a lot of the tools in there, but you have to do a lot of learnings yourself. The guest messaging is not as robust as some of the other platforms in there. So every one of them has their own pros and cons. But like I've actually had a pretty good experience on the Hospitable side. I have actually a lot of our customers on CraftedStays are using Hospitable, and they have had a good experience on there. But they're probably not pushing the boundaries as much as you are, because your portfolio has grown to a very sizable place now, where it makes less sense for you to stay on Hospitable, and it makes more sense for you to graduate to a more mature PMS, especially when you're doing a lot more co-hosting. Guesty for Pros, for instance, has a lot more owner portal, owners reporting. So if you go doing a lot of co-hosting, there are other PMSs that are a little bit more tuned for your business that way.
Yeah, the biggest thing is I've been trying to go to Guesty, and it's just expensive, dude. 76 listings, and I'm actually getting a good deal with them. I don't even want to say the number because I don't want them to get mad at me, but like they're giving me a good deal, and it's still like, holy cow, I'm paying like almost 20x what I'm paying now, right? With Hospitable, so I'm like, it's still kind of like, it's like kind of they're stabbing me in the ribs with the fork knife or something, like a little knife or something, right? And I'm like, I don't know if I should jump ship because number one, it's a paint to switch. Number two, it's a huge learning curve. Number three, I have to retrain the entire team to be on it. And number four, even though it's like you can separate the cost per listing when you compare, it's minimal, but when the grand scheme of things at the end of the year, you're like, holy cow, I paid how much for that? And it ends up being this thing where it's like, well, at some point you have to, suck it up and take it in because it ends up being something that's actually a necessity for you to succeed and to actually be better. And now I'm at, like you said, I'm at such a large amount of properties to the point where I don't think I have a choice because I need to be on every platform. Like we've been running off of Airbnb and Vrbo. We came off of Booking.com because they were a nightmare out here. But Guesty does such a good job at being able to keep me on that, keep me on each listing. OTA, and help me with the syncing and creating of the profiles that it might actually make sense to do so. Not to mention they have their own payment processor, and that's the best part. Like to me, these PMSs, it's what problem can they solve? Hospitable solve the communications problem. They're great at communications. Like you said, they give you all the messages before they actually evolved into this giant PMS. They were just a messaging platform, right? And they would allow you to check your calendars, and they would work on the best guest communications out there. Now they're trying to do a little bit of everything. It's kind of gone a little bit downhill. Now I'm not bashing on them. I love them. I still have them. But Guesty just has so many different things. And OwnerRez before, when I first used them long time ago, like they didn't have half the stuff that they have now. So all these guys are evolving. Obviously, the short-term rental space is getting more and more popular. But anyway, we can talk about these PMSs all day long. I want to ask you why you got into a direct booking platform business as opposed to everything else, because with all the experience you have in tech, like why direct booking platforms?
Yeah, for me, it came out of kind of going back to it, like the fear and the need there. Like we all feel this where for a lot of us, Airbnb has a big chokehold on us on whether or not we're able to meet mortgage. And that was a constant fear for me. And when I'm talking to my peers, there's solved problems in the operation space. There's a lot of great tools out there, but no one really made it accessible for folks to really win in direct bookings. Right. And coming from an e-commerce background, it's very analogous. Like there's lots of similarities on the platforms that I built before in e-commerce and into direct bookings. Instead of product detail pages that you see on like an e-commerce store, you have property detail pages, you have search, you have availability, you have checkout, you have all those things. And on top of that, in e-commerce, you have tools like cart abandonment, tracking, like much more robust tracking that you don't have in our space. So I just felt like I have so much learnings that I've built up over the years, building strong e-commerce platforms, that I can build a much better direct booking platform out there. And we launched our first version. I shared it with a bunch of like group members and like, whoa, like, how did you do this? And I was like, well, it wasn't that hard for me because I built something similar before.
Right.
So like for me, it's just leveraging your expertise and where can you outpace everybody else?
Right. I mean, I think it's a huge pain point for a lot of us, right? Being able to have these direct booking platforms and make them look good and standing out and, doing everything to make sure you're above the rankings and everything else. What are you doing for payment processors? Because we've used Stripe and they're terrible. They hold a bunch of your money over time. You get your first charge back from a guest and it's like they hold like 20% or some random number for like 3 to 6 months. It just are you using Stripe or are you using something different?
Yeah, we use Stripe for our personal hosting business ourselves, and we haven't run into issues with that. For the most part, all of our customers are using the PMS checkouts. So if you're using Hospitable, OwnerRez, HostAway, whatever it is, when the guest is ready to book, we push them over to the PMS's checkout pages. And Guesty for the first time is the one that we're actually rebuilding those checkout pages on our side. So we're actually integrating back into Stripe and allowing someone to bring their Stripe accounts onto our platform. So we're actually generating the credit card token, passing that to Guesty so that they can charge a card for you. But it's all like living on ours. And then the next phase is then integrating Guesty Pay in there, because Guesty has their own payment platform, like you mentioned, so that we can basically cover both use cases of people that are using Guesty with Stripe and Guesty with Guesty Pay.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe it just becomes a thing when it's like, I mean, I've ran so much money through Stripe, right? Now that it just becomes a thing where they're holding, like, it sucks. I don't want anybody holding money. But Guesty does the same thing, right? Guesty does 9%. They hold 9% as a security blanket. So everybody does it. Every payment processor. The only reason I love Guesty now is because of their payment processors, just so easy to integrate. And, my direct booking platform with Guesty was actually being done by someone else. And they actually got taken off. They weren't allowed to have their own checkout page anymore. So they had to go back to the Guesty checkout page. So now my direct booking platform for like the hotel, you go through this website, and then when it's time to check out, it takes you back to the Guesty checkout page and it looks completely different and weird. And I hated that. And they're like, oh, Guesty kicked everybody off, and Hospitable's kicking everybody off, and we can't do it. So you're saying your platform won't have to do that. You can keep it on yours and use the Guesty payment processor as well.
Yeah, so Hospitable still uses Hospitable checkout. I don't think that Hospitable never had the ability to do off-platform payments. They may have it down the road. But honestly, Guesty has it as well. So Guesty has the ability to do offline payments and be able to process your own checkout. It's just that most folks in the direct booking space, if you're building a WordPress site, it's not easy to integrate into Stripe or any other processor out there. All the APIs have been around for a long while where you could do it. It's just that most agencies just don't want to touch it because it's complicated.
Right.
It's very, very complicated. And we're going through our testing right now. But it leads to a much better checkout experience. Like, I don't want to kick someone off to the Guesty property page and have them hit that book now button again. Like, it's just not a great experience. And this way we have full tracking from when someone lands onto your site until they're checking out. Like, it's that same consistent experience there. We can keep the same fonts, the same look and feel, the same branding there. So it's a lot more consistent because we can control the entire flow there. But that is exclusive to Guesty right now.
Right. So, I've never actually integrated to the Hospitable self-checkout page. How does that look when someone goes to try to make a payment?
So what typically happens, it's similar to Guesty right now, where they'll basically have all the details on who you are, your credit card information, what days you're staying, and then they'll have like a preview on the left side. So it's like I think it's a one-page checkout there. And then afterwards, they'll do Hospitable does identity verification and also security deposits as well too. Not security deposits, damage protection as well too. So it's somewhat similar to the Guesty experience there.
And who's processing the payment?
It depends. Hospitable has two. They have Direct Premium, where they're basically the merchant of record for the booking, and then they also have Direct Basic, where you tie in your own Stripe account. You're responsible for all taxes and everything. And you're taking the payments on your own Stripe account.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, I've never bothered to look into it, which is kind of dumb on my part now that I think about it. I'm like, wait a second. Yeah, again, sometimes we miss the simplest and easiest things that are right in front of us that we don't pay attention to. My biggest thing now isn't really being on the day-to-day operations, stuff like that. So we have the team that's handling that. But little things like this, it's kind of like, I don't know why I never thought about that. So anyway, dude, So tell us a little bit about where you're going with this, what you're trying to do. Are you trying to become like the go-to spot for STR website builders? Or is there something that you're trying to integrate? Like, where are you going with this whole process?
Yeah, like coming from the e-commerce industry, like I got a lot of inspiration from Shopify. So the way that I think about it is I'm creating the Shopify for short-term rentals. I want to put in all the tools and really have everything kind of all baked in there so people can be really successful in really marketing their website and making sure that folks really convert. So down the road, we'll have new things like being able to do blog to help you increase your SEO, be able to do remarketing campaigns, maybe email collections that go back into your Stayfi, like things like that. Really try to bake in all those tools so that you're really driving traffic to your website, converting them as much as possible, and then really working with our partners to help you retarget as much as you can. So that's kind of like the overall vision there. We want to be the connector.
Okay. I love that, man. Yeah, I'm kind of pumped about that. Dan, we've gone over his platforms and his hosting and the website building. You got any other questions you might want to touch on before we get to our questions here?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on the business side of things, and Gil, where do you see you going from here as far as not only just investing, but you and your spouse, and what is next for you as you guys have kind of explored entrepreneurism and kind of broader horizons, sort of say.
Yeah. I mean, I've always had the dream of starting my own company. So like I've started that process as like the first part of the journey there. It's like, and then I've employed really talented people on my team that I get to see them like work at their best. And like for me, if I get to continue we're bootstrapped. So I fund this myself from all of our savings, and just seeing how much we've grown over even the past year is phenomenal. And so continuing to grow that organically, continuing to serve our customers in the best way, like that's the growth that I want to have. Like I'm not looking to raise venture funding and get millions of dollars of funding and scaling up the team. Like that's not my line of success. I want to build this in a very scalable manner, understand what the market needs, really working intently with our customers and building the best darn product out there. And if I get to employ dozens of other people that have the same mission with me, looks at me as a leader, that to me is success to me. Like I don't need much more than that from the business standpoint. And hopefully that doesn't pull me away. Like family is pretty important to me. I have 2 young kids. So luckily, like my business, I get to control where I spend my time. And I'm still trying to find that balance between like how much do you push hard on the business, but also how do you make sure that you're a present father there? Like that to me is utterly important. So that's something that I'm constantly recalibrating and figuring out, like, how do I structure my life so that I fulfill both ends of what's important to me.
That's huge, man. We talk about that all the time.
That's great.
Yeah. Dan and I are always talking about like what's enough, right? At what point do you say, "Hey, I'm content, I'm happy, I've succeeded." Everybody's always chasing the next shiny object, the next big thing, the keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like always trying to outdo the neighbor. Like it's good that you have a I don't want to say a threshold, but like a target where you're like, okay, I think this is what would define me being successful. And it doesn't necessarily mean quit and stop there, right? You can continue to do great and continue to do big things, but at least you have a spot where you're like, hey, I don't, like you said, I don't need to go out and raise $500 million. You know what I mean? Like that's not me. I don't need to do all that. Yeah, man, I think that's pretty cool that you've been able to get to a point where not only can you work for yourself, do what you want whenever you want, have the time with your family that you want, but also be able to grind in your business to a point where you feel that you've done well enough and you've helped a ton of people along the way, right? So that's a big deal.
For me, like you learn what is important to you. Like if it wasn't for me being in tech companies where they're all venture back and seeing kind of like what a venture back company does to you versus a bootstrap company, you really don't know like which is the right path. Where bootstrap, you can really focus on the customers much more intently. You can't have a big ass team, but you're able to build something that's really centered around the customer. And for me, being in product, that's really important to me. So if it wasn't for my 15 years in tech, I wouldn't have learned what it's like to take a different path and what is the right path for me.
Yeah, I agree. I love that, dude. I think it's funny because like when we started the conversation, you're like, oh yeah, people have started with arbitrage and have built stuff for themselves. Like that's my exact story, right? I built it to where like originally when I wanted to start was like, oh, I'm going to have 100 of these and I'm going to be making $100,000 a month. And as you start going, you're like, well, growth comes with its own problems. You make more money, but you got to spend more money. And then it's like, at what point do you go, okay, maybe I have enough now to where like I'm doing well, right? And it comes with a balance. Same thing. So, it has its ups and downs, of course, like any other business. And then short-term rentals, like any other market cycle, right? It went through a really good boom right after COVID, and now it's kind of stabilizing itself. So it's kind of like, flattening out a little bit. But again, everything has a cycle and everything goes up and down. And knowing that right spot for you is just kind of key to any business and any business success, I would say. So, well, Gil, we're at the top of the hour, dude. And, we want to shift here to our 3 questions that we ask everybody that comes on. And being that this is the big break show, we want to know, is there a defining moment in your life that you would consider your big break that got you to where you're at now?
I would say deciding to leave my W-2 job and starting my own business was my big break. I learned more in the last 12 months than I did in the last 8 years prior. Like, it's just the phenomenal growth because you're building this from the ground up. You're having to hire people, like really lead them, mentor them, figuring out which market to focus on, how to build the right product. So you're constantly juggling many different things and wearing many different hats. And I think, like, if you want to learn as fast as possible, there's nothing that pushes you harder than to be an entrepreneur.
That's huge.
Yeah. Well, our next question is, what is the greatest advice that you have ever received?
The best advice I got was continuing to work on yourself, continuing to learn, continuing to expand. Like, if you are one that is stagnant and not really learning, like, you're really going to fall behind. But the people that are hungry to learn, feed off information, they're constantly looking about how to improve themselves. They can pick up a good self-help book or whatever book and really, like, dive into it and consistently learning. Those are the people that will weather whatever problems come ahead of them because they're constantly going to push themselves.
That's great. That's great. I love that. Give us an actionable step for the listeners and viewers that they can take in regards to our conversation as soon as they finish this episode.
I don't know how actionable it is, but at some point, make sure that you take time off and do something that you absolutely love. Take the time, take the risk. You'll find some gap in your life where you've made enough savings to do something on your own. Take that risk. I did it and started my own business. And maybe I'll go back to W-2, but I've learned so much. I've grown so much. That was the biggest blessing I've done for myself.
I love that. So many people get stuck. I've talked about this in the past about the gap in the game, this book that I read. And everybody's just so focused on gaining and gaining and gaining. They don't take the time to actually enjoy what they've done or where they've gotten. And it ties exactly with what you've said. Mm-hmm. So, dude, I appreciate you coming on the show. I have one final question, actually, because you mentioned it. I wanted to ask earlier and it slipped my mind. You said something about you share stuff with your mastermind group. What mastermind groups are you in? We talk about that a lot in this in the show here. And just really, I'm curious as to which ones you're in, or is it your own, or are you in someone else's?
Yeah, it's pretty organic. I don't even think we even have a name, but when I first got into hosting, a bunch of us started a Slack channel just to help each other out. And a lot of us were in the Smokies, and this Slack channel has basically it's all virtual. Like, we barely meet, but like anytime we have Slack channels for markets to explore, tools to use, and we have like specific ones on, like, for instance, Guesty or Onerez and whatever. But we get to ask questions to these 100 people that are in the same stage as us. And I think that that's really important, is to surround yourself with people that are at your stage or one level above. Because if you separate yourself and you're taking too much of a step, it's really hard to learn in that mode there. But if you're surrounding yourself with people that's just like a step above you, it makes a world of a difference, because people can really relate to you and really show you the ropes very tactically.
You know, I love that you bring this up, and I'm glad I asked this question, because we talk about paid masterminds all the time, and you just said, look, dude, I'm learning from people, and we're not paying for anything. We're just masterminding. We're literally just giving ideas to each other about what we've been through, sharing our experiences, and helping the next person figure out what they need to go or what overcome a hurdle, and vice versa, right? And it's the simplest thing. You're on a Slack channel texting, right? It's like I can start a group chat and text messages with a bunch of other hosts, share ideas. It's going to cost me no money, right? And you're going to learn, grow, and do better by talking to someone that's already been through what you're trying to go through. Dude, this was awesome. I'm glad you brought this up. I appreciate you coming on the show. Anything that you want our audience here to know about you, websites, platforms, where to follow you, social media, any of that? And we'll also put it on the show notes.
Yeah. So definitely check us out. The company that I started is called CraftedStays. You can visit our website, craftedstays.co. Definitely check us out if you need help on just really figuring out, like, should you do direct bookings, how you should approach it. If you're using something else and trying to figure out, like, how do you migrate, there's a demo link, but really time for me on my calendar. If I'm pretty open. Rafa, you know this, like, I'm willing to share my time with folks to really help them get to where they want to go. So book a time with me and I'll gladly help on that, and run all the usual channels, Instagram as well too. So CraftedStays, you can follow us there.
Cool, dude.
Very cool.
I appreciate you.
Thank you, Gil. We appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dan and Rafa.